Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. This is episode 869. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is August 22nd, August 22nd, in the year of the Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And before we get the show started, I know my daughter doesn't listen to the show only when I have it on the TV downstairs to look at it. On my, we have two Google accounts or two YouTube accounts. One's for myself and the show here and everything I do in association with the show. And the other one is to do with when Lori and I travel. We want to start taking, when we go to these little jaunts, we try to take videos and pictures and that, and I'll cut it into a video and I'll upload it on our camping channel. Trekking with Dan and Lori is what it's called. So I have that on the TV downstairs, and I do that so I can watch the video on the big screen to see how it looks and how it sounds. So I want to say happy birthday to Lori and my daughter, Deanna. She's 22 years old today. That's my youngest. If that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what does. I don't feel that old, but I mean, our youngest is 22, and she's off at doing a program today. Twice a week she goes out to a program, and they take them around and they do things with them, and they do some I want to say scholarly, but it's not scholastic. That's what I want to say. Scholastic things with them, writing and math skills, stuff like that, to help them out in their everyday lives and their everyday living. So I just want to say happy birthday to Deanna. And we're actually, this afternoon, we're going to take her out to a movie. I'm not going to say where or which movie, but we're going to take her out to a movie, and then we're going to take her out for dinner for her birthday. So I know she's looking forward to that because she asked me 100 times what we're doing this evening after she gets home at 3:30. So let's just jump right into this, folks. It is Tuesday. I'm giving all the guys that do the work around the house fair warning. You got a honey-do list and it involves repairing appliances or power equipment outside and you can't find the parts around locally. Got to go to the danclementshow.com and click on the Sears Parts Direct widget. They're an affiliate marketer of mine and they're sponsoring the show today. You get 10% off your lawn equipment and more. And there's an offer code over at the website, so please go over to danclementshow.com and click on the Sears Parts Direct widget, and you'll be able to find a part. You're going to be able to get it shipped to you quickly, so when Saturday comes around, if that's your day to fix these things, or in the evenings during this week so you can have your Saturday free, why not skip on over there, help support the show at the danclementshow.com, and also knock one more thing off your honey-do list for that honey of yours. Today's daily Bible reading comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verses 14 through 15. Now after that, John was put in prison, and Jesus came into Galilee, preaching the gospel of the kingdom of God, and saying, the time is fulfilled, and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent you and believe the gospel. Or repent ye and believe the gospel. And you know what? I have to check to make sure that I have the right... I don't. I was actually copying down to King James. No wonder why I'm tongue-tied. I haven't read the King James fluently for years. I have different versions on my Bible suite on my computer here. So I should put that link up there too. It's actually just, if you look up eSword, you can get that. There's a lot of free versions there. The New American Standard Version, the New King James Version are copywritten. You have to pay a one-time fee for lifetime license. And if you ever lose that license, you just go back to eSword and you put in your email and your password for eSword, and it'll give you the instructions to go get the licensing for it. So that's a great thing. But getting back to this, the time is fulfilled, Jesus says, and the kingdom of God is at hand. Now there's a lot of folks out there in the denominational world that says they're still waiting for the kingdom. It's just like the Jews are still waiting for a Messiah. Well, that boat already sailed. And as far as the kingdom's already here. The kingdom is the church, the ecclesia, the called out of God as spoken of in the New Testament. So it's a misnomer to say that the kingdom isn't here. The kingdom's been here since Jesus Christ established the church back in 33 AD. Today's quote meal is from an unknown author, but I really like that. This one. The mind justifies what the heart has chosen. The mind justifies what the heart has chosen. And that's why I like this one, because you know what? We need to approach life, and this is a Christian principle. We need to approach life with an open heart and an open mind. Now that doesn't mean that we adhere to and accept every heresy or every Looney Tune thing that comes down the pike. It just means we need to be willing to sit down and reason these things together and reason things out. So the mind justifies what the heart has chosen. So a lot of times, and this is happening today, folks, and this is just what frustrates me so much about folks today, is they want to close their mind to debate, and they want to close their mind to discussing new ideas. And they think that just because, and this has got to stop. We need to talk to folks about morality, but what needs to stop is people thinking that their ideas, because they think that they're taking the moral high ground, that their ideas are what counts the most. And if they perceive you not to be taking the moral high ground with your ideas, then your ideas don't matter. And that absolutely has to stop, because the moral high ground or morality in things, as we look at them, as human beings look at them, are very subjective. And I keep telling folks, when they ask me, my Christian walk with God and Jesus Christ informs the rest of my life, especially my political talk. It informs it. It gives me a worldview that I can filter things through. And absolute moralities that I find, objective moralities, absolute moralities that I find in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, are what I use to judge things. To judge if a position is good and moral or not. Just to say that I'm taking the moral high ground with this and I have everybody's best interest at heart, places you on the level with God, because you're saying, and you're leading people to assume that you know what's best for everybody around you, or everybody in the country. The common good, as it was. And folks, that's a dangerous road to go down. It really, really is. And when folks start couching their arguments in morality that is very subjective, it's very, very hard to counter. It can be countered. But 9 times out of 10, the folks that hold that position aren't going to listen to you. Because, again, they feel that they have the moral high ground. No matter what your argument is, they're going to stay in their created narrative echo chamber. You're going to stay in the echo chamber with that created narrative, and they're not going to let any ideas come in. And the only ideas that they'll accept are those that are absolutely like theirs, and they will not take into account anything else. They can't stand. Honestly, folks, people who have this high ground morality in their minds absolutely do not like free speech. They absolutely do not like free thinkers, because it challenges them. And then when you get a redneck like me coming out of the woodwork, espousing the Constitution, espousing the Bible, talking about God and Jesus, and talking about how my Christianity informs the rest of my life, it drives people crazy, because I don't adhere to their standard of morality. The standard of morality, and I'll just, and I don't want to keep going back and picking on my son, but he's picked this up somewhere. The standard of morality that he is using is a humanistic standard. And even, I've talked with libertarians about this non-aggression policy act stuff, and this goes along with what this quote meal is talking about. This non-aggression, policy. They said you're free to do whatever you want. You're at liberty to do whatever you want, as long as you're not aggressing against somebody or causing harm to somebody else's property. Okay. But what is that based on? What's that that's a morality there, folks. What is that based on? Well, I'd have to say that, they may disagree with me. Some libertarians may disagree with me. I have to say that would be based on the golden rule: do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If you don't want people to aggress against you, don't aggress against people. That's not going to say you're not going to have anybody aggressing against you, but you better not be the provocateur in that situation. You better not be poking the bear, in other words, in that situation. All right, enough said about that. We'll get into more of that when I climb down into the articles today. Today's Bible lesson is by Al Shannon, and I really thought this was good. Now, Al Shannon published his own stuff over at biblicalproof.wordpress.com, and this was posted today. All the links will be in the show notes page after the show's over. I didn't get a chance to get it all fixed up in the show notes page, so they're not there yet. An unread Bible is worthless. Yep. And you can honestly, folks, that's a good article to go read. I encourage you to read it. You can extrapolate that out, that any unread book or argument, unopened argument, is worthless. If you can't stand your ideas to be put under the microscope of public discourse, to actually debate them to see if your arguments hold up or your suppositions hold up, honestly, you have no business putting them out there. I'm not, and I'm not saying you don't have the freedom of speech to do so. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you do not. I'm going to get back to this thing. You do not have the moral authority to put those out there if you are unwilling. If you are unwilling to allow public discourse and debate on your positions. I've said this for years, and I know a lot of my brothers and sisters in Christ have said this for years. I will believe in the Bible. I will believe what God has told me, and Jesus told me through his word in the New Testament, how I need to behave as a Christian, how I need to behave in worship, and all sorts of things, until someone comes along with reason and facts and proves me wrong. I've thrown that challenge out there many, many times, and nobody's picked it up. Nobody has picked it up. And there have been, over the course of years, the millennia, where skeptics and outright atheists have picked up the Bible to try to disprove it. And when they give it an honest read and study it and that, more times than not, they're actually converted by God's word. You think about that for a second. So an unread Bible is worthless. And I would honestly say that an unopened argument is worthless also. I may be stretching it out there just a little bit, but I don't think so. On this show, we talk about a lot of things, a lot of different things. And a lot of what we talk about is driven by the news of the day because it's fresh on people's mind, and I try to use those as teachable moments. It's just like one of the articles I have here from one of my favorite sites is, let me get back down here. This is from thepublicdiscourse.com, and this is the Witherspoon Institute. It's like a publication of theirs on the web. The legacy of white supremacy: why Confederate monuments should come down. And here again and this is by Matthew J. Frank. And here again, I just skimmed over it. I'm going to give it a really thorough read afterwards, but just the title alone tells me that Matthew is dismissive of the causes of the Civil War. We talked about this yesterday. I talked about the 1828 tariff or tax. Tariff is a tax on incoming goods, and how the industrialized North exploited the South with this. And it was all the writings leading up to it, all the senators in secession wasn't about slavery. That was rewritten. Secession was about the state's power to nullify unconstitutional federal laws and the right to secede, as Madison and Thomas Jefferson had stated in their writings. And because it's a contract, and if one side of the contract, the contract's usually between two parties. So if one party of the contract doesn't live up to the contract, the party of the first part. I'll get a legal term in there, folks. The party of the first part is under no obligation to fulfill that contract. And I'll bring this down to the simplest forms, and this is, again, in the New Testament. Matthew talks about this, about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. The only biblical reason for divorce is adultery, fornication. But it's called adultery. Okay, and the injured party. Marriage is a contract. It really is. It's a contract between a husband and wife and the third party, and that's God, because they do this before God. And so in the New Testament talks about this. The only reason for divorce is adultery. So the injured party in that arrangement, in the marriage, has no obligation to live up to that contract anymore. The party, the second part, broke it. Broke the contract by cheating on his wife, or the wife cheating on the husband. So, I'm just breaking it down to the simplest forms that I can explain to you. So, again, I'm going to thoroughly read this again, and folks, trust me, I'll tell you, I email these folks that I'm telling you I'm emailing, but they must get so much email. I don't know how to get a hold of them any other way. They must get so much email they don't look at all of them, and that's fine. I understand that, Lord willing, someday I'll get there, but I'm not. I want to be able to answer all the emails, whether it's myself or a staff member that helps me to go through them. And then some of and people do that. A lot of people don't. Some people do, and I think the folks that do, I think that's more courteous. But that's just me. That's my personal preferences. But I'd like your thoughts on that article, "The Legacy of White Supremacy: Why Confederate Monuments Should Come Down," by Matthew J. Frank, Franck, over at thepublicdiscourse.com, because I'm pretty sure I made a good case yesterday of what happened in the Civil War. A gentleman from St. Louis, Pianke, he said he was black, and he was on the side of keeping the Confederate monuments there, because a lot of these generals, a lot of these soldiers weren't fighting for slavery. They were fighting because of the taxation. And it was not until, and I just got to re-emphasize this, I cannot emphasize this enough, it wasn't until the North seemed to be losing the war that President Lincoln and Congress passed the Emancipation Proclamation to get the sympathy vote behind them from the Union, from those that supported the Union. And that obscured history from that point on of why the Civil War actually started, over tariffs and taxation and that. So I don't want to, you can go to yesterday's show, episode 868, and listen to that if you haven't listened to it already, and you'll get a good sense of what I was talking about. Now, real quick here before I get into the rest of the articles, I do want to thank all the listeners at Blog Talk Radio that listen to my show or download it. I'm still maintaining right at averaging a little over 300 a day on there, which is fantastic. I pray that you keep it up. And the one thing I'm really, really wanting to ask the folks at Blog Talk Radio, take a couple seconds to rate it. If you're listening on Stitcher or iTunes, or if you're listening straight off of the a widget for Blog Talk Radio, leave some comments for me, rate the show for me, but most importantly, above all those things, share the show. If you like what I'm doing here, if you think this has value and it would help somebody out, or you just think, boy, this Dan Clements, man, he's a brilliant speaker, and more people need to hear him. Help me by word of mouth. Get the show out to your friends and your family, that whether they listen to it live or they download it in podcast and listen to it later, I'd appreciate that. Word of mouth is what's got me here so far, and it's what's going to take me the distance, so far. And then I want to thank, I've actually increased my YouTube subscribers and my views, and especially the length of my views have actually gone up. So I just want to I'm trying to thank everybody. I'm trying to thank everybody over at Patreon, because you can watch the shows over at Patreon too. If you like what I'm doing, Patreon's one of my fundraising sites that you can go over and make a pledge on there, like a monthly support pledge, anywhere from $1 to however high you want to go. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not even asking individuals to give, a lot. You can give me $1, you can give me $5, $10, or $20 a month, whatever you can to help me continue with this show, to actually help me to grow this show. And I'm not saying I'll ever get rid of folks that want to support the show financially, but I want to be able to get to the point on the show to where if something happens to that platform, if someone gets radical on there, and doesn't like what I'm doing and kicks me off the platform, like there's been a couple people that has done, but I don't think I'm going to violate the rules of service for them, but or content, whatever. But I want to get to the point where I don't have to worry about that, and your contributions to the show would really, really help in that point. Now, I have where to start today? I mean, I have a lot of stuff here. I have this one here. Twitter users compare CNN to Orwell's 1984 for headline, Peace Through Violence by Ryan Savadra over Daily Caller. And let me get that up. CNN published an article on Friday by Sarah Ganim and Chris Welch, which appears to promote Antifa as groups that want peace and whose purpose is protecting big corporations and wealthy elites. The article, titled Unmasking the Leftist Antifa Movement, Activists Seek Peace Through Violence, describes members of Antifa, which New Jersey has designated a terrorist organization, as simple protesters and activists. As some Twitter users point out, the article was reminiscent of George Orwell's novel 1984, where in the first chapter, Orwell introduces the idea of doublethink to the reader. War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Wow. And I didn't read the book. I watched the movie. Sorry. But this did come up in the movie. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The article states, Antifa activists who operate without a centralized leadership told CNN that their goal is peace and inclusivity, and their methods are often violent. Antifa leaders admit they're willing to physically attack anyone who employs violence against them or who condones racism, as long as force is used in the name of eradicating hatred. Last time I checked, if the Hatfields and McCoys hadn't killed each other off, they'd still have the feuds going on today. There is no way under God's green earth that you can drive out hatred through violence. None. Can never be done. The only way you drive out hatred is if you replace it with something else, because those people that you deem to be spouting hatred, that you're using violence against, you know what they're seeing? They're seeing it right back. They're seeing hatred from you if you're participating in this. They're seeing hatred from Antifa against their ideas, and to the point that they're willing to use violence. And that tells me, and most people that are on the receiving end of that violence, that means the hatred that they're receiving is, in their mind, magnitude more than what they're espousing, and just espousing. And so I thought that was kind of funny that Antifa, you know, we're using violence to get rid of hatred. Excuse me? Say that again? Maybe I got wax in my ears. I didn't hear that right. And again, it's unbelievable how these people operate and their thoughtology, as it were, what they're thinking. You know, when I used to mess up bad, and trust me, I tell you, when I was growing up, I did a lot of things that I messed up, especially breaking my dad's rules or just doing dumb and stupid. And one of the first things you'd hear out of my dad's mouth when something happened that shouldn't have happened because I wasn't thinking, he said, "So, boy, what were you thinking? You need to use that head for something besides a hat rack." My dad was fond of saying that thing about the hat rack. So what were these people I don't think they think before they talk. They have talking points. They have sound bites. They have a narrative that they follow. They're in their echo chamber screaming this, and it never gets outside their echo chamber, and they never let any dissenting ideas or any different ideas to come into that echo chamber because they don't agree with them. And most of the time, I've been watching video, and I could spend all my whole show just showing you videos of this, and I'm not going to do it. You can go on YouTube and look these things up, you can look up these videos where they got these reporters going in and asking these people, "Why are you protesting?" Why the Women's March last year? They had actual reporters and a new mainstream journalist, Main Street journalist anyway, coming in and asking people why they're protesting, and they couldn't articulate it why they were protesting. They just thought it was a good idea. We should come out here and support them, and they didn't intellectually buy into it. And folks, that's dangerous. That's mob thought. You know, where you put an idea into the mob and they buy into it. They're not sure why they buy into it. They just do, you know, because they want to go along with everybody. And that's a very, very, very dangerous way to do things. That's a very dangerous way to think. But there's too many people out there that think that way. CNN's article portrays Antifa members as victims of society by saying the organization consists of members of society's fringes, which includes undocumented immigrants, transgender people, low-wage workers, those who don't conform to the traditional 9 to 5. The article then appears to glorify Antifa by highlighting that they organized in Nazi Germany before transitioning into crediting President Trump for the group's reemergence as if they were comparing him to Adolf Hitler. People are freaked out by a Trump regime, freaked out by the far right, said an organizer for the website. It's going down. The news blog for Antifa, a lot of people saw neo-Nazi symbols. There's a reason why people are becoming polarized. It's real life stuff that's happening. CNN also said one of Antifa's biggest lies CNN also said one of Antifa's biggest lies by saying that many Antifa activists take the position of this is self-defense. Let me unpack this real quick here with Antifa. We talked about these folks a couple weeks ago, talking about, you know, they were talking about how they're glorifying Antifa by highlighting that they organized against Nazi Germany. The dirty little secret here is Antifa in Nazi Germany were fighting for the soul of the nation at the same time that Hitler and Nazism was the National Socialism was rising in Germany. And if you look economically, and I'll just step back and look at this economically, socialism is the next step in the rung to full-blown communism. And so here you have National Socialists that are the Nazis fighting the Antifas, who are the communists, for Germany. God save the German people. That's all I got to say. Have mercy on the German people, because you got these two rotten, totalitarian, collectivist ideologies fighting for the soul of the nation. And I put a meme out the other day. Just because you're less bad doesn't mean you're not bad. You are a rotten side of the same dirty coin. You got Nazis on this side, and I'm not talking left and right. Both of these ideologies belong in the anti-freedom level, the plane that I put on my show. They're definitely in the anti-freedom camp. Neither one of them wants citizens to have freedom at all. Matter of fact, some of the things, I don't know if it's in this one. Let me see if I can pull something up here. No, I guess I was just reading across something, and oh, I know what it was. It was in yesterday's show. I knew I'd remember it sooner or later. Let me see here a second. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out which one of those protesters event says. Let me see what this one says here. I didn't get to some of these yesterday on the show because I took a couple phone calls, which I'm not, like I said, that second phone call, it caused me so much work. It's honestly, folks, anymore, it's just really not worth it without a call screener and also being able to bleep that stuff out before it gets out on the air. Antifa protester Yvette Filarka says violence against far right is not a crime. This was posted on the 18th over Daily Caller by Ian Miles Cheong. She's a Berkeley teacher, area school teacher, a militant left-wing protest responsible for organizing the riot at the University of California, Berkeley in February 2017, claims that violence against the far right is not a crime. But what they consider far right is different from what I consider far right. That's why I'm getting away from that left right paradigm, because it muddies up the water. It muddies up the ideological waters. I had an article that I was looking at. Let's see. Here it is. Breaking. I wanted to get to this yesterday. Breaking. Antifa issues horrifying demand to U.S. citizens. And this is by Frank Spear over at ChristianNewsAlerts.com. And he posted this on the 20th of August. There has been much debate over President Trump's statement last Sunday when he condemned all hate groups, including the KKK, Nazis, and Antifa. Now, Antifa has gone above and beyond to prove the president's point. According to their Facebook page, and let me see if I can, wait a minute, let me do something here. Let's see if we can pull this up over here on my other monitor here and maybe show it to you. Oh, let's see here. Paste that, enter that. They may have taken it down by now, I don't know. And this is Boston Antifa. And I'll read that while that's coming up here. The Facebook group Boston Antifa sent a stern message to everyone in Boston. There's no room for capitalists, conservatives, libertarians, classical liberals, or supporters of the U.S. Constitution in our city. You must leave. There you have it, folks. It couldn't be any more clear message. And let's see. Yeah, and here, let me... since I'm not using any volume on this, and let me get over... Hopefully you guys can still see that. Yeah, let me try to increase this just a hair bit. Now, if you notice... right chair, right here, that's what they're saying. They said there's no room for capitalists, conservatives, libertarians, classical liberals, or supporters of the U.S. Constitution in our city. You must leave. And that's Boston Antifa. Now, someone, please tell me, how in the world that you don't resist an ideology like that? Again, supporters of the U.S. Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a strict constructionist. I'm a member of the Constitution Party, which has been deemed a hate group by that super anti-freedom group, the Southern Poverty Law Center. They are so anti-freedom that they're not even in the same hemisphere as freedom. And the same way that these Antifa groups are the same thing. They're so far away from freedom that you can't even see them. And that's something, folks, this is an ideology, Antifa. It's communism. It is out and out communism. When you have, there's no room for capitalists, conservatives, libertarians, classical liberals, or supporters of the U.S. Constitution in our country, you must leave. Make no mistake, this group does not support freedom in any sense of the word. The mere fact that they are willing to say that supporters of the U.S. Constitution should be dead is all you need to hear. The group wants to see pure chaos in the streets, and they are doing everything they can to push this agenda onto the American public. Luckily, many are aware of how diabolical these people are and know that they must be stopped. So again, we have this on here where this Antifa, they want to shut down all freedoms. They don't believe in freedoms. A lot of folks in the anti-freedom groups that I've classified as anti-freedom, like Antifa, like Black Lives Matter, and I got an article we're going to talk real quick about here too. They want something for nothing. Communism. And remember me a couple weeks ago telling you, why does the DNC support groups like this? Because in their dirty little hearts, I shouldn't say that, but in their heart of hearts, they want to use issues that's going to divide the country and destroy what America is so they can have absolute control over America. You see this all the time. And we're coming up on a new, here in September, after they come back from their August break, they're coming up on the tax reform. Now just look at the tax reform and see how much the Democrats are going to howl and scream about this, allowing people to have more of their own money. Can't do that. People aren't smart enough to, this is from the DNC now, people aren't smart enough to spend their own money. We need to take it and spend it for them. Just like my son talking about charity. You know, we need to do your charity work for you. And again, I'm a constitutionalist. I don't see that in my Constitution. I see that in my Bible, that I'm supposed to be charitable. And if I see somebody that's naked, if I see somebody that's hungry or destitute without housing or anything like that, then I need to do something about it. Me and a group of my friends get together and do something about it if I can't do something about it myself. But I don't read anywhere in my Bible where it says I need to go to the government and set up a program with the government to take care of something I should be taking care of, or my friends or the community should be taking care of themselves. And the clarion cry for that, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole very far, but the clarion cry for that, is, private charity, is there's too much that needs to be done. And my response to that, if it wasn't being done by the government, there wouldn't be the need for it as much as there is today. There just wouldn't be the need for it. The problem when you give something away, there's a lot of people that take advantage of that gift, as it were. Okay? When he gives it away free. I wish that were the case with the gospel, but it's not. Because government welfare doesn't take any reasoning. Government welfare does not take any type of mental gymnastics. Even if you don't qualify, if you game the system, you can get money out of the government. You can get taxpayer dollars. And I've told people before, and I'll say it again, as long as there's one person out there gaming the system's wrong. And as long as the system doesn't follow the constraints of the Constitution, the restraints of the Constitution, it's wrong also. It really is. See here. Oh, we still got plenty of time. So we have this idea of peace through violence. And I entitled the show today, Peace Through Strength, Not Force. And why do I say that? How many wars, and it doesn't seem like this is happening lately, but how many wars have been averted because both sides sat down at the table and negotiated before they went into war? How many wars were averted because a country was deemed so strong militarily that it'd be foolish to attack them because of the in-kind response or harsh response? And real quick, and again, I don't like going down these rabbit holes too far because this is something you can research. To end the war with Japan, I believe it was necessary because of what Japan said, that we used the atomic weapon to show them that the folly of their statements. Japan said that they would fight us to the last man, woman, and child. And as the fighting was going, and we were still winning, but as the fighting was going, if they just extrapolate out the number of casualties and deaths from there, it would have cost us a lot more. I mean, a lot more on both sides than the folks that died in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But Japan said we're going to fight to the last man, woman, and child, and they would have done so. But how do you take the steam out of something like that? You show them it isn't worth doing. The same way that peace can only come through strength. Peace can only come through strength. Not through force, not through violence. Because you know what? Again, when we're talking, and I'm bringing this down to an ideological level here. Peace through strength, not force. And I'm talking about, and I'll have a little spiel there, as it were, what I'm thinking about when I put these titles up. And I'm talking about intellectual strength. I can't force you to believe anything that I believe. Matter of fact, I can have the most reasoned, well thought out argument in the world why you need to believe this way or why you need to do things this way, and you can still decide for yourself whether you're going to follow that or not. And that's totally up to you. And if you still decide to follow your way over some. And we're talking about political and life ideologies. If you still want to follow your way, I can't force you to follow my way. I can just put my argument out, and the only way you'll know which one's actually better is through public discourse and debate, and have it aired out and see which arguments are strong and they hold up under scrutiny and which are not. But the anti-freedom folks out there want to shut down this type of debate, this type of freedom of speech, because they, on some level, they got to know that their ideology is rotten to the core. Communism has never worked every time it's been engaged. Socialism has never worked. Has always made the country poor, not richer. Has always made the poor poor, and those that are in, especially in communism, socialism, those that are connected richer. And like I said, again, we have an example down here in Venezuela. I was watching some videos last night about Jordan Peterson. He was talking about the Matthewian principle of the rich getting rich and the poor getting poor. And he's talking about Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, when Matthew talks about, that those that have more will be given to, and those that do not have, even what they have will be taken away from them. And he extrapolated that out. I think there's a principle, without stretching it too far outside of religion, I think there is a principle there, and it's something you can see that's happened in society. You can actually look at society and extrapolate this, that you see that the people that have more, that do good, that actually follow the principles of capitalism, not crony capitalism, of free market systems, and care about their customers and want to enrich everybody around them and not be selfish and stuff like that, they do better. And therefore, they actually grow, and they might have I know businessmen that have 2 or 3 different businesses. And then a poor person who, by choice, and this is always by choice, we choose everything in life. My son says, well, I was lucky because I was born at the time I was born and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, no. There are a lot of things in my life. I made some bad decisions in my life, and I paid for them. My family's paid for them. But there's been other times I made very good decisions, and my family benefited. Me going driving trucks so my wife could stay home with our special needs daughter and take care of her full time, which was needed at the time. I had that skill set. I was able to do that. I made that choice. Me and my wife made that choice together. So we didn't know what else to do. Because we weren't going to make ends meet, me working at McDonald's or another local job that I didn't have a skill set for. I was a diesel mechanic, and I'm a heck of a driver. You give me something with wheels on it, or even tracks, it won't take me long to figure out how to drive the dumb thing. I may not be totally proficient, but I can figure out how to drive it. And so we make choices in our lives. And I do believe there's a lot of people out there that make choices that either keep them poor, or they don't make choices at all to bring themselves out of poverty. And no amount of government program is going to do that to folks. No amount of government programs are going to bring people out of poverty. It hasn't happened. We spent over $1 trillion in the war on poverty, and the poverty level percentage-wise is still the same as it was when we started this war. So someone please tell me what's wrong with that picture. There's got to be something they're not taking into account, and the biggest thing they're not taking into account is people's choices. It's just that simple. And I've met a lot of people that are comfortable with where they're at with their life. I tried to talk to my son about that. I keep going back to the conversation with my son because that stimulated my mind. I need that interaction. And, I said, what happens if you're doing this job A, making this widget, and you say, I need $15 an hour to live my life, to sustain my life, and whether you have a family or not. And I said, our arguments, it was immaterial. And I said, as an employer, if somebody else comes in and says, I'll do that same job for $10 an hour, who would you hire? I asked him, who would you hire? Well, I guess I'd hire the $10 an hour guy, but maybe he isn't living as well as the guy on $15 an hour. And I'm like, but what does that matter to you? And this is where, folks, we get this way too much in our country, and this really grates my cookies here. We got too many people worrying about other people out there that they may not be doing as good as this guy over here, when they don't even know these folks, and they may be totally comfortable with what they're doing here at the wage level they're at. His mindset is egalitarian. His mindset is collectivism, and I'm trying to, trying to persuade him through arguments that that's not the right thing, because what you're doing is extrapolating it out to a whole population, and everybody's different. Everybody has different wants, needs, and desires, and levels of risk they're willing to take. And so what if that guy making $10 an hour is, let's say he's just him and his wife. Let's say his wife doesn't work, and let's say you have a wife doesn't work and you're making $15 an hour. But if that guy and his wife can make it on $10 an hour and they're happy with that, what business of that is yours? And then usually the argument, and my sons went this way, and I've had other people argue with me this way too, but that's not the point. What is the point? If that guy's willing to do that job for $10 an hour so he can have a job, and they can make a go of it on $10 an hour, that tells me that maybe that $15 an hour for this job is too much for that job. Well, but you see where the thought processes go with communists and socialists and even Nazis. Tell me that Hitler didn't control Germany. Tell me that the Nazi Party, the National Socialists that were Germany, didn't control that country down to the last nail. Tell me that Mussolini and fascism didn't control Italy. They define fascism as, nice, clean, where the government, controls, doesn't own, but controls the means of production in a state or a country. But Mussolini went well on beyond that. Mussolini was a fascist, but he was borderline communist in everything he was doing. And the same way with Hitler. He was borderline communist. And yet you had Antifa, oh, they're fascists. That's a different type of communism. We don't like it. That's a different type of collectivism. We don't like it. We don't like what he was doing. And the reason why Antifa didn't like what Nazi Germany was becoming, because they weren't in control. It wasn't the ideology of the Nazis that they hated. They hated that the Nazis were gaining power and gaining control over Germany. It's just that simple. And we have these people on the fringe in this country that think the same way. It's an erroneous way to think. It's wrong think. And I'm here to stand against it, because it does not promote and protect freedom. It just doesn't do that. All right, this other thing really grated my cookies today here. Let me find it here real quick here. Oh, Black Lives Matters activist makes a list for white people. I thought this was hilarious. This is by Justin Caruso over at the Daily Caller, posted yesterday, August 21st. An activist associated with the Black Lives Matter movement recently offered a list of requests for white people. The article for Leo Weekly listed, and I have it up here if it did pop up. Okay. It listed these 10 things. And let me read through these real quicker. I do have a little bit of time here left. 1, white people, if you don't have any descendants, will your property to black or brown families, preferably one that lives in generational poverty. 2, white people, if you're inheriting property you intended to sell upon acceptance, give it to a black or brown family. You're bound to make that money in some other white privileged way. 3, if you're a developer or realty owner of a multifamily housing, build a sustainable complex in a black or brown blighted neighborhood and let black and brown people live in it for free. Yeah, we see how that one really bugs me, because I used to drive a lot in the inner cities and the big cities and these housing projects. If you don't own something, you don't take care of it. I'm just saying, if you don't own something, you don't take care of it. And there was an episode on This Old House where this developer bought an apartment building with people living in it, and he was going to remodel the whole thing, and he got them housing to stay in while they were doing it. These folks were putting sweat equity into it, and he more or less turned these into condominiums that these people actually owned and bought, and they became an association in the building. And guess what? They came in and helped remodel everything. They got their apartments, and they visited them like a year or so later, and the place was doing fantastic because they had ownership. They had skin in the game. Giving people something where they don't have skin in the game, most people don't take ownership of that. They actually just let it go. 4, white people, if you can afford to downsize, give up the home you own to a black or brown family, preferably a family from generational poverty. White people, number 5, if any of the people you intend to leave your property to a racist blankety blanks, change the will and will your property to a black and brown family, preferably a family from a generational poverty. 6, white people, rebudget your monthly so you can donate to black funds for land purchasing. 7, white people, especially white women, because this is y'all's specialty. Nosy Jenny and meddling Kathy, get a racist fired. You know what the blank they're saying. You are complicit when you ignore them. Get your boss fired because they racist too. 8, backing up number 7, this should be easy, but all those sheetless Klan Nazis and other ill blank white men will all be returning to work. Get them fired. Call the police even. They look suspicious. Number 9, backing up number 8, if the white person at your work or as you enter in spaces and you overhear a white person praising the actions of yesterday, we're talking about Charlottesville, get a pic, get their name, more info, find out where they work, get them fired. But certainly address them, and if you need to, you got hands, use them. Again, violence to make your point. That's really going to come across. And 10, commit to 2 things. Fighting white supremacy where and how you can. This doesn't mean taking up knitting unless you're making scarves for black and brown kids in need. And funding black and brown people and their work. Again, what amazes me about these folks is this ideology that we're owed something. And again, there is not a white person living today or a black person living today, I'm going to put them both, that were slave owners. Neither one. And I know a lot of people complain about me saying this, and because I've had people on Facebook and that saying, that I don't think that's true history, and they need to go look it up. And that article's talking about reparations. So how do you figure that out? If a descendant from a black slave owner and his family aren't living in generational poverty and they're actually well-to-do, are you going to extend that ideology to them also because they were oppressors? You see what I'm getting at here, folks? This is crazy. This is crazy, the ideology that's going on in this country today. Rebudget and put funds someplace. Again, poverty is a choice. Now, some people, and this is, and I do get into this discussion with folks, well, some people just can't move. Folks, I'm telling you that there are organizations out there, there are charitable organizations and churches that help folks move all the time. There are other places in the country to live other than in the ghettos that are government created. There really is. And people come out of them all the time. And sometimes, not all, because I don't know all these people, but I bet you that $1 to the dozen donuts, a lot of folks live in these ghettos, live in these government-controlled plantations in the inner cities, choose to remain there. And the one reason why they do that, and this is a shame, that they've lost hope. They've lost the vision of what America is. And the vision of what America is not owning a house with a white picket fence around it. The American dream is freedom and liberty. That's the American dream. And they've been lied to for so often that the American dream just is not for them. And that is a bunch of malarkey. It's a bunch of baloney. The American dream is for every American. We got people trying to come into this country legally and illegally to try to get a piece of that American dream, to live free and have liberty. Folks, we cannot allow this ideology to fester, but we can't force people not to listen to it. All we can do is appeal to the American public with reasoned, strength-filled arguments and let the public decide. And in our arguments, it's okay. It's okay to look at the folks across the aisle. If we're debating with somebody, if we're debating somebody, our debate opponent, it's okay to criticize their ideas, but you got to back up and say why. You can't say, well, that's just a bunch of garbage and move on. You have to give reasoned explanations of why what they're doing or what they're thinking is not okay. And the last point I want to make here, above all the stuff that we're talking about here with the tolerance and the violence and free speech and stuff like that, it is one thing that somebody from the alt-right espouses something and says, this is what we want, and tries to make an argument for it. He's put his argument out in the public square, the marketplace of ideas, and now, since that argument's out there, now it can be debated. It's one thing for someone to say that. It's a whole nother thing if they practice their white supremacy as far as oppressing people and doing all sorts of evil to folks. That's where free speech stops, and that's where the law picks up. That's beyond free speech. But it's no different for Antifa. They can espouse their ideas all day long, which I disagree. I disagree with both of them. But both sides can espouse their ideas all day long. But once they espouse them and they go out in the public square, then they're debatable, whether Antifa thinks they're debatable or not. They are open for debate. They're open for criticism, ridicule, whatever. But the moment you pick up a stone, a cement-filled soda can or beer can, or a stick, and you start beating people because they are only exercising their freedom of speech, and just because you disagree with that and you feel oppressed, you're wrong also. You're absolutely in the wrong. And this is what has been happening in the country today, and this is where we're at today. We have these folks that do not like free speech, and the reason why they don't like free speech is because of they don't like their ideas challenged. They think they're right, they're intellectuals, they're educated, they think they know more than everybody else in the country, so therefore they must be right, you must listen to them. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, folks, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.